They say the wheels of justice grind exceeding fine, but they do grind. Last week, week before last, up in McHenry County, a certain amount of justice was given to a young 6-year-old boy who died in 2019. We all remember the story of A.J. Freund. He was murdered by his parents, convicted of murder. But what also happened was the child welfare agents, child welfare specialist who was in charge of the case for the Department of Children and Family Services was brought up on charges of child endangerment and reckless conduct, as was his supervisor. 2 weeks ago, a judge in McHenry County rendered his decision on the case. He found the child welfare specialist guilty of child endangerment on 2 counts of child endangerment. He found the supervisor not guilty, not because he didn't think he deserved it, but because he couldn't prove when the supervisor knew what was going on or what he knew and when he knew it. But the fact remains is that for the first time in American history, a government employee charged with child welfare has been found guilty of child endangerment here in Illinois, in McHenry County. In his final remarks before he rendered his decision, the judge said this is a young child who was failed by every adult he ever came into contact with. The mother who murdered him, the father who buried him in an unmarked grave along a country road, the child welfare agent who was more interested in checking boxes on a form than looking at the evidence of his own eyes and doing something to get that child out of harm's way, the supervisor who sat silently throughout the entire trial and did nothing to try to defend the fact that he had failed this child as well. But what the judge said at the end of his comments is, I think, even more damning. He said the adults that failed this child include the Department of Children and Family Services. They are the ones also who are responsible for what happened ultimately to this child. I didn't say that. The judge said that on the bench to their faces. We just learned yesterday that the governor has proposed a new state agency dealing with child education, early childhood learning. And ironically, he's removing the daycare licensing function and responsibility from DCFS to put it into this new agency. Now, I've been calling for that for months. I don't think DCFS has any business doing this or many other things, because it can't do what it is supposed to do, and that is take care of the children of this state. It would have been nice if we had known that this was going on. If you read CapVax this morning, you see a little addendum saying that this has been in the process for quite some time. None of us over here knew anything about it. Don't have a clue as to what's in it. Don't know who's going to run it. Don't know what it's going to do. It's going to take daycare licensing out of DCFS, and that is, in fact, an improvement. But the governor also said that, and I'll back up. We've been dealing with DCFS and JCAR for the past 6 months, too, dealing with rules, dealing with child teachers in classrooms, the failure and the inability of daycare centers to find adequate staff. But DCFS wrote a series of rules that are now in place because they ran out the clock, and without rules, these daycare centers don't know how to act. Were they consulted? No. I I spoke this morning with the head of ILDOC, which is the Illinois department that, or agency that represents daycare centers here in Illinois, and I was informed that no, we knew nothing about this until the governor made his announcement yesterday. Now, the governor's comment was the fact that ILDOC was more interested in putting unqualified people in charge of daycare classrooms, which could not be further from the truth. So I'm calling on the governor from the floor of the Illinois House to say, listen, if this is the way this agency is going to be constituted, if we're going to end up with an agency that is designed and everything by the echo chamber that gave us the 3-hour rule that we had foisted upon us, if we don't have some sort of accountability, both in this agency and the Department of Children and Family Services, nothing's going to change. If A.J. Friend's life meant anything, it has to mean that we're willing to do what we have to do to reform this agency and get it on its right track. I know they're looking for a new director, and I hope to God that the governor has the strength to go out of this state and find somebody who's willing to look the governor in the eye and say, this is not going to be run this way if you want me as your director. Child welfare belongs in under local jurisdiction. There are states that have models that we can use to put child welfare within the context of multidisciplinary teams of cops and doctors and teachers and other people who are charged with seeing abuse and neglect, who see it all the time. But if what we have is a state agency that comes in on top of that and is more interested in filling out a form in order to cover its own ass than it is to understand what it is to take care of kids in this state, in their own communities, then damn it, why are we here? Why are we here if we're not willing to protect the most vulnerable among us by doing something different than it's been done for the past 25 years? Ronald Reagan once said about the Soviets, trust but verify. Well, tell you what, I'm not going to trust, but I'm certainly as hell going to verify. Every single thing that goes on with this agency, this new agency, I want to know about it. And I think every one of us here should want to know about it, because there isn't one of us who doesn't have a case in our own districts where this agency has fallen on its face and kids have been harmed as a result. It's up to us. It's up to us. I'm asking for your help. Join me. Thank you.